Professor Norman Uphoff at the 3rd Quadrennial International Rice Conference held in Hanoi this year. And towards the end of the series here, I think we're celebrating a little bit some of the achievements that have been made by SRI practitioners around the world. The development and progress that's been made has been quite significant. Would you like to share some of your observations and findings about what has happened in the past few years?
I was able to communicate with Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, who was the co-chairman of the Congress, and he was able to get a position on the water management panel. And fortunately, we had about half a dozen posters that had come and been accepted without any coordination. So there was an SRI presence. We had about half a dozen colleagues from Thailand, from Nepal, Pakistan, and over there. And it was a good opportunity to meet with many scientists, but this time we submitted probably about 12, maybe more like 15 abstracts. 6 of them were accepted for oral presentations. We had about a dozen posters, probably even more than that. Many of them didn't say it was SRI, but actually it was. So the presence was much greater, and the receptivity of delegates, I think, was much stronger. The concept SRI is now pretty widely understood in the rice community, and also I was pleased they invited me to be on the opening plenary panel to present our perspectives on SRI and agroecology. So it wasn't being kept sort of out in the corner or in the fringes of the program as it had been before. One of the changes also is that in 2006 there was almost no attention given to climate change. Water scarcity was talked about, but they weren't really talking about the effects of storms, drought, and so forth. So what I'm seeing is that now we're more relevant than before to the priorities that rice scientists and rice extension people would have. We're getting some research now coming in done by Indonesian or Japanese scientists looking at how SRI not only would give you some buffering against the effects of climate change, but could actually contribute to its mitigation by reducing the net effect of greenhouse gases emitted from rice fields. I think for now it's more important to point out the extent to which rice plants grown with SRI methods with their deeper root systems, their greater long live root systems are able to resist drought, to withstand the effects of flooding, effects of cold temperature, and so forth. And there have been studies done since 2006 in Vietnam and India and other places which document the resistance to storm damage, to pest diseases, and other kinds of problems that farmers face as the climate becomes more variable and often more extreme. So I think we have made progress. It's going to take another 4 years at least to make a even greater advance in acceptance. But we're trying to see governments now. The government in Vietnam here is giving very strong support to SRI, thanks also to support from Oxfam America. And so they've gone from 3,400 some farmers in 2006 to 422,000 farmers last year. This year is at least 800,000, probably over 1 million. So I expect within a matter of 3 or 4 years, much of Vietnam will have adapted all or at least most of these practices to save water, save seeds, save labor, and lower costs and so forth.
And what about China?
Well, China has gotten very good start in 2 provinces, Zhejiang and Sichuan. When we had a workshop in Hangzhou last March, organized by the China National Rice Research Institute, with participation, by the way, from the DPRK, the report from Sichuan said that the Provincial Department of Agriculture had calculated that they'd gone from 1,120 hectares in 2004 to a cumulative total of about 650,000 hectares now. And by their calculations, the use of SRI method had added about 1.6 tons per hectare, and they calculated 1.04 million tons of rice, or paddy rice, produced thanks to SRI with less water and less cost. In Zhejiang, they calculate about 880,000 tons of rice produced since 2004 when they started SRI promotion, attributable simply by change in practices. Well, it's almost 2 million tons of rice free, with less water and less cost. So I'm hopeful that other provinces in China will similarly respond, but it's also showed that this doesn't happen easily and doesn't happen without some leadership. And in both of those provinces there are some Chinese scientists who also have good commitment to getting their knowledge applied in the field. And so they've worked closely with the Provincial Department of Agriculture in both places to bring this opportunity to the farmers.
So how can you say SRI is providing a more climate-smart agriculture methodology?
Well, with two sides of it. One is how do we adapt to the changes in precipitation, temperature, and so forth, and then how could we reduce those changes? The second, of course, is much more difficult. India, there are any number of reports now that during the drought last year, during this failure of the monsoon, that SRI crops simply stood up better, and the farmers got harvests while their neighbors who didn't use SRI didn't have any. The Agriculture Minister of Tamil Nadu has reported, it was in the Hindu newspaper in December last year, that even though the monsoon had caused the rice area to be reduced in that year because of the climate change, they nevertheless increased their production because he said that SRI yields were in the 6 to 9 ton per hectare range, whereas the state's average is otherwise about 3.5 tons. I think the most significant thing we're most confident is buffering against drought, water shortage, but we have also seen that storm damage is less when the winds and the rain come in. The SRI plants being deeper rooted, having stronger tillers, can withstand the storm damage. They don't lodge, don't blow over. There's one study done in Angra, the State University of Andhra Pradesh, last 2006, where they had a cold snap during their IPM, the Integrated Pest Management trials with SRI, and the temperature went below 10 degrees centigrade for 5 days. And their normal plots of rice had almost no yield, like 0.2 tons per hectare, 200 kg per hectare, whereas the SRI plots gave a yield of 4.16, I think it was, which is for them a virtually normal yield in spite of that cold spell. Now, if you had 10 days or 20 days, I'm not sure you could understand that, but of the 5-day cold snap, the SRI plants gave a good response.
Pest
So
resistance?
pest resistance, a lot of evidence, especially here in Vietnam, that you can reduce the incidence of pests and diseases. In 2006 in Vietnam here, they did trials across 8 districts, and the average reduction of the major pests and diseases was 55% during the spring season, the early growing season, and 70% in the summer season. So it means you don't need to use pesticides, which is a good environmental impact. It's not climate change related as such, but it is important for farmers and for the environment. And we're starting to get evidence that, we knew all along that if you stop flooding your fields, you should reduce the emissions of methane gas into the atmosphere, which is a much more potent gas than carbon dioxide. We were concerned that nitrous oxide, which is even more potent greenhouse gas, might increase when you don't flood your fields, because it's normally generated from soil systems during the aerobic phase, not the anaerobic phase without oxygen. So far, the studies been done by both Japanese and Indonesian scientists have indicated that the methane is definitely reduced, and they don't see enough nitrous oxide emissions that would offset the benefits. But much more work needs to be done on that. Those numbers will change field to field, season to season. Even change in rice variety might give you a different result. So we're hoping that the powers that be, which control resources for research, would say there's enough evidence now this could be significant, we should look at it and get some idea of what are the magnitudes involved.
Thank you.